are now underway. Welcome to the December meeting of the Rocky Mountain HR People and Strategy Group. We are the region's premier group for senior level HR practitioners, and we were chartered in 2005. So I want to welcome those of you who might not be that familiar with the group. My name's Laurel Ditson, and I'm a member of the board of this group. And I am filling in for our president, Lauren Choate. Like all the rest of us on the board and who serve this organization, she has a real job, and now and then it calls, and she had to be taking care of her primary business this morning. So she's sorry to miss us and to miss this presentation, but I'm happy to step in for her. We do have a number of our board members on the call today. It's a completely volunteer board, but if you are on the board, if you would have your camera on here briefly at least, and just give a wave so we can recognize those of you who are board members. Thank you so much. It's a fun group, and we love bringing these presentations and best practices to you. There's Patty, thank you. We also want to thank our sponsors, because especially in the past 19 months or so, they have been incredible partners to us to make sure that we could keep going without our in-person events. So we really want to give them a shout out. Our sponsors include Alliance, who does insurance and HR and payroll. Thank you, David. We have HRQ as one of our sponsors, and most of us in the HR community are very familiar with them and the range of services they provide, and College Invest. And probably many of us who are practitioners offer College Invest to our workforce to set aside funds for college tuition that we know is pretty extraordinary of a burden these days. So we also want to thank our education partner, the University of Denver, and they are, thank you, Ken, a great partner for us in making sure that we're connected to leading research and knowledge in the community and being connected to our students who are the next leaders in our organization. I would like to give a brief little highlight of our January session, and I am going to turn it over to board member Laura Belston to do that. Can you tell us what's coming up on January 13th, Laura?
Sure, thanks, Laurel. And hi, everybody, good morning. So on January 13th, we have an exciting program. We've all been reading and hearing about this great resignation, and some of us are experiencing it. And it seems that one of the factors that is going into employees considering leaving is they're starting to question whether they feel their work has meaning. So the question becomes, what, if any role does HR have in minimizing resignations by helping employees find meaning and purpose in their work? And I know, on top of one more thing, on top of everything else that we've had going on over the past 2 years, but there are things that we can do. And we have a speaker in January, Dr. Brian Dick, who is a psychology professor up at CSU, Colorado State University, who will be speaking with us. He has made it his life's work to study meaning at work and how to bring meaning to work and how to find a calling. So he will be giving us an overview of some of his very practical and applied research and practical tips on what we can do as HR leaders to bring a greater sense of meaning and purpose into the workplace. So January 3rd, 8:30 a.m., 13th. Thank you, Laurel, at 8:30 a.m. And we will be doing it virtually again. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. I'm looking forward to that one as well. So let me do a couple quick housekeeping things, and then I'll stop talking, and you'll be grateful for that. So the presentation will be provided to attendees afterwards. So that's usually a common question. We are going to try to be very interactive. We'll have a breakout group, I think, at least one or two, perhaps. We'll play that one by ear and see if other people trickle in. We'll let Morag decide that as she looks at the size of the group. So we do ask, of course, with good Zoom etiquette, that you mute yourself when you're not speaking. I would encourage you to stay on camera if you can. I know sometimes your bandwidth doesn't allow that and it crashes your system. But part of what we try to do as an organization is network and be interactive. And sometimes it's easier to do that when you can actually see each other. And we're in each other's homes and workspaces in a very different way these days. But let's try to be a community as best we can. That said, we will use the chat function as well. Kathleen and I will be taking care of the chat for Morag. So if you have something, she'll let you interrupt. I've worked with her enough now to know that you can chime in anytime. If you are a little more reserved or polite, as some of us feel, you can put it in on the chat and then I'll interrupt because I'm good at that. So I didn't introduce Kathleen earlier. She is part of the Rocky Mountain HRPS team, and she is the one who keeps all the gears going in the background. And she often likes to stay in the background, but we couldn't do it without her. So thank you, Kathleen. So we will be chatting. We will be interactive. And now let me move on to the real important stuff. Let me introduce you to Morag Barrett. She is an author of Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships and also The Future-Proof Workplace. She and her team are working on a book that's due to come out soon, and there's a working title. We've had the one that you saw, that we are doing Show Up or Shut Up for this presentation, and the newest working title is You, Me, We. So we will wait with bated breath to see what the actual title becomes. But she is the founder of Sky Team. That's an international executive development company. It's based here in Colorado. They have supported the development of more than 6,000 leaders in 20 countries and on 6 continents. Morag has been featured in Entrepreneur.com, Forbes, and CIO.com, among other places. She's a member of the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches organization. And all of that sounds great, but I have to tell you, I've been blessed to meet this Sky Team staff during the pandemic. And I honestly had very little contact with them prior to that. I have not met most of them in real life. I only know them by Zoom calls. But I have to tell you, the rapport, the mutual respect, the fun that this group has together shines. And you know how hard that can be, even with Zoom and with technology. This is a team that truly works together, has fun together, enjoys each other. It's palpable on a Zoom call. And it's the kind of team we all dream of belonging to. So that relationship that they have, you can't help but have that influence your workplace, your business, and your bottom line. This is the sort of result we all crave. So I just have so much admiration for the group and for Morag, who leads it and obviously practices what she preaches. So with that, I am going to turn it over to her so that we can all dive in and enjoy it. Morag, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Laurel. It's always interesting to listen to one's own introduction and hear it, but I'm going to actually start with a plug for a colleague's book by Dr. Bob Nelson. Some of you may have had his books like 1001 Ways to Engage Employees, but he recently published Work Made Fun Gets Done. And I'm honoured to say that Sky Team is featured in there as one of the case studies, because as Laurel says, we live what we research and what we share with our clients. And it's the genesis, both for my first book, Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships, and now this deeper dive in You, Me, We, why we all need friends at work and how to show up at one. But I'll also let you know that we're not perfect. But the basis that we have for our team connections have helped us to not just weather the storm of the COVID pandemic and curveball, but to weather other storms that naturally occur within any small organization or any large organization. But here's a personal example just to set the tone of where I had my own aha moment within the last few weeks. And it was the usual thing. A phone number popped up on my phone, and I reached for it in order to answer, because I'm still a bit old-fashioned, and put it against my ear versus having the earbuds to hand. And as my hand hovered over the phone and I looked at the number, I remember thinking, should I answer? Should I let it go to voicemail? And then finally, technology for once saved me, and it auto-directed into my voicemail message system. And I'll admit, at that moment, I had this little pang of guilt. And then the message icon popped up on my phone, and I literally groaned out loud. There was going to be no escape from this phone call. So as much as we're all working from home, if you found yourself talking to yourself or groaning out loud or rolling your eyes when you see a certain phone number come up on your message system, how many of you have had that experience? There's nobody to listen, but we just groan. So here's what happened is I looked at it, I knew it was Fiona, and I knew what she wanted. She was calling to BMW again, bitch, moan and whine about this co-worker. And it's been a real Jekyll and Hyde relationship for the last year. And whilst it was amusing at first, it has definitely gone downhill. And Fiona's been calling regularly to literally vent and offload. She was trapped. She was certainly not engaged in her work. And, you know, you talked about the Great Resignation. She is considering her options. And the key here was I was groaning because I knew we were going to be back to, oh my goodness, he's done this. You won't believe what he said. That feeling of being a victim and trapped. And despite our ongoing conversations, Fiona hasn't yet recognized her own role in the relationship, in the pattern of behaviors. And whilst the stories she's telling are worthy of the best soap opera storyline, it's starting to weigh on her because her confidence is at rock bottom. She's disengaged in her work. She's looking for opportunities for the prosecution, and it's starting to infect other relationships and her reputation. But she's not ready and willing to make changes. And that's when it hit me that not only is she stuck in a pattern of behavior where she needs to show up differently or shut up, part of the reason for the original working title, that I'm too stuck in this pattern of behavior that's no longer serving me or Fiona or our relationship. The very fact that I hesitated to answer the phone is not a great place or feeling to be. And I need to step up and show up differently and have the conversation with Fiona that helps she and I to get unstuck. So as HR professionals, maybe you've got a Fiona in your life, somebody who's coming with the same storyline but seems unable to break free. And maybe it's starting to impact how you show up in that relationship. Maybe you have that toxic colleague or team that just aren't delivering at work, whatever it might be. But that is the genesis for the ally mindset profile. The how do we, look up and understand the context in the relationship. How do I want to feel in my own presence? How do I want you to feel in my presence? To what extent am I willing to show up differently? Either the more challenging and talky Morag or the more listening and empathetic Morag. But be intentional and make a choice about how I show up so that ultimately we can step up and step into a more powerful relationship together. And that's where I started with Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships, is introducing the relationship ecosystem and understanding the critical stakeholders we all rely on for success and the health of those relationships from ally through to adversary. But Eric, Ruby and I were continually being asked, yes, this resonates, it makes sense. But how do I show up as an ally? How do I show up as an ally if I'm Fiona and I've got a toxic colleague, but don't become a doormat in the process? How do I stand in my own truth and set new guardrails? And that's what I'm going to share with you today. And for those of you who've already taken the ally mindset profile, thank you. And those of you who haven't, don't worry, you can take it afterwards or not. And it will give you your own personal insights as to where you naturally gravitate and where you too may be able to turn the dial up or turn the dial down. So in the last few weeks, if you've sat in a meeting thinking, ooh, that'll never work. Or heard yourself saying yes when you know you should have said no. Or maybe hesitated like me with your hand over the phone, whether or not to answer that call, then this is the place for you. And as Laurel said, it's fully interactive. I'm going to be asking you to type in chat in just a moment. In fact, is the first opportunity for you to do so. But as questions come to mind, please just ask. I'd rather this be a conversation versus a me talking at the camera. But let me start. I talked about how the fact I groaned. I was like, oh God, not again. Frustrated with Fiona, guilt for myself and how I'd responded, nervous about how I was going to step up to that tough conversation and recalibrate our relationship. There's just some of the emotions that I've experienced at work, in addition to the fun and the laughter and the frivolity with Sky Team. So take a moment right now and just reflect. The last month, let's just keep it narrow. What emotions have you or your friends at work experienced in the last 4 weeks? Thanks, Deb. Obligation and frustration. Exhaustion. Yeah, I'm counting down to vacation 8.5 working days since it is now Thursday morning till I get a break. So exhaustion. Ooh, boredom, Ken. Nice. Happiness, joy, anger. Ooh, hang on, that was moving way too fast. Worry, overwhelm. Here we go again. See, I want to sing that one. Guilt, Jeff, you and me both. Overwhelmed. Oh, Laurel, the eye roll at a leader's comment. Here's what I've learned is best done in the privacy of your home office, or on the inside. I made the mistake once of doing an eye roll in front of somebody. Didn't go well. All right, so let's see. Deb, you were the first out of the block. Just come off mute and just tell us a little bit about the obligation and frustration, if you wouldn't mind.
When, let me move this over here so I'm actually looking.
There she is.
There's an obligation to, sometimes I feel that obligation to hear that person when, and it's that BMW. I had not put that together. I really like that. And it is really easy to get sucked into that. And then there's just frustration when people don't want to face up to the reality. We're currently going through an acquisition. It's kind of an ugly time right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay.
I've always been the acquirer. I've never been the acquired.
Worry. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. And so what's that triggering in terms of the behaviors and mindset that you're seeing at work?
Self-preservation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because there's an element of...
Is there a place for me when this all shakes out, and maybe I better join the Great Resignation? So that's, that's a big force right now going on.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, I saw you matched me with a guilt. So tell me about the guilt.
Sure, happy to. And actually it's related to my wife having a severe injury, and so not being able to support her like I should, and also not being able to be my my full self and for my team. That kind of hits me on both sides. So that's kind of where I'm coming from for that.
Okay, well, I wish her a speedy recovery.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for sharing there. So let's just hear from one other person. Who else would like to, or not would like, who else will help me fill the air and just share a little bit about the emotions that you shared in the chat here? And I can still see you all, so I could pick on someone.
I can jump in, Morag. Good to see you today.
And
this
you.
is Genevieve Brenner.
So tell me about yours. And I'm scanning down the list because I know I read it when it came past.
Yeah, mine was Here We Go Again. And I was working with a client, and we were going through the same problem we had last time we did work together. And in my head, I was like, okay, here we go again. And I thought, oh, that's not a productive way to think, right? That's not a great way to be. And so I was trying to put my coach hat about it. Why am I feeling that way? And what could I do about that? What actions do I want to take? But it was just a repeat of the same problem that we had experienced last time.
Well, thank you for sharing there, Janavi. And as we look at the emotions, you can see there's a lot of overlap here. Now, the good news is there is always a silver lining. We do get to see joy a couple of times. Tina, you've put it in here. Patty, you've put it in here. But there is a risk that we start to label the emotions that we're feeling, like the anxiety or uncertainty, as negative. And as HR professionals, as you know, emotions aren't in of themselves good or bad. They just are, but they are signposts that tell us that there is something else happening in our environment. And if you've ever watched Inside Out from Disney Pixar, my go-to EQ training resource, then you'll know that without anxiety and uncertainty, we would not appreciate and enjoy certainty and excitement. Without joy, you don't get to understand sadness. We need the peaks and valleys, but it's when we get stuck. And when we get stuck feeling the blues and thinking it's just us, that's when the issues happen. And so the research, even before the pandemic, was that there was an epidemic of loneliness in the USA, with 3 out of 5 people saying that they're feeling isolated, and 1 in 4 saying that they have nobody that they can turn to in an emergency. Just think about that. 1 in 4. There's 20 plus of us on here. That means 5 of us are feeling like it's just me. And even that exercise of typing the emotions into the chat, when I've done that with leadership teams, it has released the pressure valve, because it doesn't change whether I'm feeling tired or exhausted. But by letting it out into the chat, seeing that others feel the same, it is now no longer just me. It's not that I'm broken. This is something that we are experiencing. And if we aren't asking, if we aren't creating opportunities to check in, then that pressure valve just continues to go until it explodes, usually either inappropriately, in which case, again, it comes across our desks as HR professionals, or we see it in the silent walking and the great resignation. What we also know is that when we have a sense of connection at work and build the team, that we can reduce absences. And when people are feeling disconnected, absences can go up by more than 5 times. And that doesn't just mean I'm not coming into work. It also means I'm signing into the Zoom, but I'm multitasking. I'm signing into the Zoom and smiling and nodding, but I'm not giving you my mental all. I'm not fully contributing. And finally, the statistic of all, that was, again, the loneliness is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It has a huge impact on our health, on our heart, on our physiology, and it really does matter. But we know when we're stuck, because we're like Fiona, we're BMWing, we're leaving at the end of the day, closing the laptop and going, you won't believe what happened at work today. You won't believe what so-and-so said. Let me tell you about that leader who said something that made me do an eye roll. But when we're feeling the feels, then anything and everything is possible. That's back to Bob Nelson's book, Work Made Fun Gets Done. Because as you know from the Gallup research, when we feel connected, then engagement levels go up. Happiness, overall happiness with life, not just the day job, but the life job, is increased by the more than 46%. Millennials reporting that socializing and friendships for them are extremely important and important to career success. And the elusive Gallup 12, 63% higher engagement when we have a best friend at work, question number 10, and feel a sense of connection and belonging, which, given the extended nature of the COVID and the work from home, is even more important. Because for leaders who aren't deliberately and thoughtfully scheduling spontaneity, creating opportunities for people to share what they're truly thinking and feeling, and a way to feel a sense of connection and belonging, they are going to be contributing to what you're experiencing in terms of people who are making alternative choices. Do I stay or do I go now? I have a podcast, People First, and I'm excited that Gary Ridge is going to be a guest early in the new year. But Gary has built a huge reputation for his work and leadership at the WD-40 company. Now, I don't know about you. I think it's required. If you've got an electric kettle, we all have a can of WD-40 somewhere in the organization. But within WD-40, he refers to the employees, the employee base, call themselves the tribe. It is all about the people. And recognizing that the discretionary effort that Gallup are trying to help us to tap into is inspired by the emotional connection at work. It is inspired by the quality of our relationships. But often we're so busy running on our hamster wheels, we forget to pause and understand, well, who are we dependent on for our success? Who needs me? And like Fiona, am I showing up as the best version of me to help her and to help us to succeed together? So I'm coaching a number of leaders at the moment, and I start each coaching conversation with what appears to be a relatively simple question. What's your number? The leader I'm thinking about, who I'm coaching, is in the middle of the technology industry. And to describe this organization as a little chaotic, British for cluster, is an understatement, and it's been getting worse. And with the pandemic and the work from home environment, it has only exacerbated the situation. And I read today, it was 4.2 million people quit their jobs in October. You talked about the Great Resignation. And I asked her, so what's your number on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, that's it, I'm done, out of the door, to 10, everything is lovely, little house on the prairie. And her number last week, 3. Think about that, 3 out of 10. And it wasn't a reverse scale moment. She didn't misunderstand. It literally sucks. And McKinsey recently shared that 40% of employees are likely to leave their current jobs in the next 3 to 6 months. And of those, 64% are saying that they're considering leaving without having somewhere else to go to. So there are headlines everywhere about the Great Resignation. And as HR professionals, as leaders in the organizations, because this isn't an HR problem, it is a leadership problem, is how do we pivot that from the Great Resignation to the Great Attraction? And if we haven't been investing in the people side during the pandemic as much as we know we should and could have, it is never too late to start reaching out and making those deposits in the relationship bank account. So I'm not going to ask you to discuss, but I'm curious, if I asked you today, what's your number on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, that's it, the end of my tether. And I'm not going to read them out because we're recording this, but from 1 to 10, where 1 is, I'm at the end of my tether and seriously considering alternatives, to 10 is, everything's lovely. What's your number today? Just type it in the chat and let's just see our spread today. So thanks, Deb. Thanks, Patty. Thanks, Sharon. Wow. So for those who are watching the replay, we have a great spread. It looks like we've got from between 3 to an 8+. And I just ask people to think about, take that pulse check, because ultimately that number is the difference between I quit or I fit. And again, I know this isn't rocket science, but my last bit of data for now, and I'm going to hand it back to you, it's all in the numbers. And this too comes from McKinsey. They shared this in March of this year, that when we think about our organizations, when we think about our own leadership, it often can be that we look back and say, well, it's not me, we're doing okay. But 56% of the people responding to this McKinsey survey described the relationship with their boss as mildly or highly toxic. And as we know from exit interviews, the relationship with our boss, our immediate team, is one of the key reasons people choose to leave, in addition for career opportunities, etc. 56%. And of those, 76% described interacting with their boss as the most stressful part of their day. And to me, that was heartbreaking news, because we are the they and the leaders. And you think about how HR is often misunderstood within the business. We're either hugs and lollipops at the one end, or be careful, the HR witch or whatever at the other end. We've seen the cartoons and we've heard the whispers. And the reality is neither of those. We're here to help ensure that people fit, that we can thrive, that we have that sense of belonging. And as Lauren says, that we have that sense of purpose and connection with what I do every day and how that helps the business, the community, my career. And yet the numbers remain stubbornly stuck. So why is it, if we're all showing up to be the best version of us that we can be, how is it that these numbers still get reported? And part of it is because we judge ourselves by our intent. We know we're trying to be the best HR professional to do the right thing for the business and the right thing for the employee. But we are judged, and we judge others by their impact. And we write these stories, whether it's the hugs and lollipops or the HR witch story, in a nanosecond. I wrote stories about Fiona when I saw a number coming up and what that conversation was going to be like. And I hadn't even picked up the phone to see. I judged her. I judged the interaction before it even happened. And therefore it didn't happen because I chose not to answer. More fool me. But let me give you an example. It doesn't just happen in a social environment. It happens in the work environment every time. Let's assume for a moment that you're working with a colleague who consistently interrupts you. They've just chopped off the end of your great thought, your sentence again. Either come off mute or put in the chat. What are the stories that you're writing about that colleague in that nanosecond when they interrupt you once more? Tina, what are you thinking about your colleague that just interrupts you for the nth time?
So for me, when that happens, I tend to get really silent. And so it's more of a disengagement, where I just patiently wait until they finish talking. And then, depending upon how I feel about how many times I've been interrupted,
Yep.
I will either, respond at my best, or my emotion and how I'm feeling will show up in my tone.
Okay, so we vent. We think we've got a poker face, but trust me, we don't. It leaks out. People know. So thank you for that, Tina. Patty, why don't you come up? They're rude and they don't value me.
Yeah, I personalize it.
Oh,
so
yeah, Ken, finish up and then I'll come back to you, Patty. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, jumped in.
That's fine.
I personalize it and assume I did something wrong.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how quickly it becomes about us?
Mm-hmm.
Or I must have done something wrong, and you can see it in the others that maybe I feel disrespected, I don't have anything of value to add. Thanks for that, Ken. Patty, what about you?
Yeah, number one, I do think they're rude. I'm just like, you're rude. And then number two, I always feel like you don't value my opinion. If you're going to cut me off, then you don't value me. And there's something about how I'm showing up that makes them not want to listen to what I have to say. The one thing I'll add too is that I'm really good at calling people out if they do it to someone else. If they do it like in a meeting, I'll be go, oh, why don't you let so-and-so finish that thought or whatever. But if it's with me, never do it.
Okay, there you go. See, one rule for others and one rule for you. All right. So as we look at the list in the chat, we've got disrespected, you're annoyed and frustrated, judgmental, they have lousy communication skills, they're needy, they're rude. Okay, peeps. Well, my name is Morag Barrett and I am an habitual interrupter. Now, in terms of the stories you're writing, giving me the benefit of the doubt, Erica's chuckling here. Do you think I interrupt because I want to be perceived as rude because I'm not listening? I want you to be disrespectful. I'm selfish. I don't value your contribution. Erica, you grinned at the camera, so I'm going to ask you, do you think I'm interrupting because of those reasons? And if yes or if no, what might my underlying intent be?
I was chuckling because you just really changed the narrative on this. And I would assume that it's none of those things, which is why you're interrupting. There's probably a lot of other reasons, but I totally agree with everyone's chat comments about that's exactly how it feels. So I would assume that you have positive reasons for interrupting, and just really thinking about that in a different way.
So what might be the positive reasons? Anybody come off mute and share. What might be the positive reasons for interrupting? Tina?
So as you were talking, I know a colleague that does that a lot, and he's actually a really nice guy. He is afraid he's going to forget his thought or lose this great idea that he just needs to share with everyone. And so I have learned from him that it's not always intended to be rude, but it is more of a self-obsession, right? It's about him getting his idea out.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. So yes, why do I interrupt? Well, because it's a bad habit. I interrupt because you've just said something amazing and I want to go deep, and let's come back to this point. And so things like I wrote down when Laura made her comment about meaning, I was thinking, oh, I want to reference that later on. Finding different ways to capture the thought versus having to articulate it is just one of the techniques that I'm still not perfect at and never will be.
Patty, did you have an additional comment, Patty?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think a lot of times how we interpret is based on the relationship.
Yes.
So if you were interrupting me, I would go, she's excited. She wants to contribute or something like that. And so however deep our relationship is with the person is going to influence whether I think they're rude or whether I think they're fun.
Yes. And we're going to get to the ally mindset in just a moment. I love that. Thank you. And here's the thing. I am not recommending or suggesting, if I go back to this, that just because I know I'm excited about what you say, that I'm therefore giving myself permission to interrupt. Any of our bad habits that we are successful in spite of, this isn't a get out of jail free. What this is, though, is being intentional about how we show up. Do we even understand whether or not the relationship really is intact? Are we a go-to person and an ally, or a go from and an adversary? Because the stories that we are writing about each other are what causes some of the disconnect. And when we think about the Gallup 10 question of, do I have a best friend at work? In the new book, You, Me, We, I'm challenging that that's the wrong question. Because you, me, if the question is, do I have a best friend at work? It is passive and it's reactive. It's allowing me to sit back and say no, because you were all mean to me at lunchtime and you didn't let me to sit with the cool kids, or you interrupted me again. Whereas if we turn that question around to, am I a best friend at work? Now I get to show up differently within guardrails to be that and to get to the yes that we need to get a highly engaged workforce. So I am going to put you into a small breakout rooms, just 5 or 6 minutes. And my question for you is, I shared there my habit of interrupting as a simple table stakes example. But how and when are you most often misperceived by others? Where is your intent lost in the impact that you're having? And what impact does that have on yours or the reputation of HR within the business? So I'm just going to put you into groups. I'm going to give you about 6 minutes. And then when you come back, just a couple of insights, and then we'll move direct into the ally mindset. And how do you shift from being a go from to a go-to colleague? See you back here in the Grand Hall shortly.
Yeah, we had good conversation, Laura. I think so.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask for 2 volunteers, Patty. And since you've broken the ice here, maybe you or somebody in your room could be one of them. Give me an example of when are you most often misunderstood? What were the themes that came out of your conversation then, Patty?
Are you ready for us to? Okay, yeah. I think one of the things that we had was the majority of people in our room can be very direct. And sometimes that can come across as mean, or, you don't like someone, et cetera. It can become a bigger thing than it actually is. The other one is just like, you're really tired, and so when you're really tired, your patience is thin and you can come across as a little short, maybe, or if that's empathetic, then you might want to be perceived. Did I capture that right, Laura, or anyone else on our team?
Yeah, and and just more on that, like as far as being tired, like then if you come through as not sympathetic, even though you've been dealing with the same thing for a very long time, people may not know that. And then we just talked about introvert, extrovert. Like if I'm always saying what I think I need to say, then it can be perceived as you're not being patient with other people or being a know-it-all or whatever.
Okay. So this was a brief opportunity just to pause on where are you most often misunderstood? And here's what I know personally and professionally and from the research is that our misunderstood genius at best is someone's brilliant jerk and at worst just somebody else's jerk. And the question is, how do you change? And you're not alone. The research from the Ally Mindset profile shows that when we start to look at it, we are all being misunderstood more often than not. 67% of the now 550 leaders that have completed it report that their success has been undermined by the words or actions of a colleague. 67%, 2/3. That means everybody in this room, as you look around at this celebrity squares, that means 2/3 of you are actually in the rogues gallery. All right. Now, whether it's intentional or unintentional, of those 67% who say their success has been undermined by the words or actions of a colleague, only 3% of it is coming from my direct reports. And I have had leaders come to me saying, well, what if I've got an adversary on my team? Well, that's when I say talk to HR, but you've got to reset, provide feedback, manage expectations, manage up or manage out. 18 or 19.8% are saying that it's coming from somebody more senior, whether it's my boss or other leaders in the organization. 11% are coming from peers within my function, but a whopping 29% are reporting that their success is being undermined by peers elsewhere in the business. So going back to what Patty said, these are the relationships that we tend to underestimate their impact on our success and underinvest in terms of nurturing and building a sense of shared purpose, understanding how our styles may be similar or different, whether it's introvert, extrovert, big picture, detail person, whatever it might be. My number one priority is number 10 on your list. If we aren't curious and asking those questions, is it any wonder that there is invariably a gap and a disconnect? And finally, 5.5% are reporting it's from outside the organization. It's customers, it's vendors, it's others. So this opportunity to transform the quality of our relationships, it's like Fiona, you can't wait for that toxic colleague or that vendor or whatever to change. It has to start with us. And the only way, this is why I like the new book title, You, Me, We, the only way that I can move from a me and the victim mentality is curiosity on you and what's driving your behavior. And that's how we get to the we. And if there is no we, there is no corporate and team success, which brings me to the ally mindset. So the ally mindset is the 5 practices that differentiate between the go-to and go-from colleagues. If you think about your best colleagues ever, I'm sure, and I'm going to ask you to do that in the final breakout session, you're going to understand how they role model these 5 practices on a consistent basis. Now, as you received in the pre-work, my gift to you is the opportunity to take the Ally Mindset profile for free, and you'll get your individual report immediately. If you have questions about it, 2 things you can do. One is connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an email. I'll happily get on a call and talk you through what the implications might be and some suggested next steps. The second opportunity is stay tuned, because the new book will hit the market. Our publication date is October 18th, 2022. If you've not yet taken it, you can either go to this URL, don't put www in front of it, or I learned this week how to make QR codes. Look at that. Technology whiz in the making. So that QR code is going to appear on all the slides. Feel free to bring your phone up, snap a picture of it, and it will take you to the right website page, if I did it right. All right, so what are the 5 practices of an ally mindset? And it starts with its foundation of abundance and generosity. And abundance and generosity starts with me, but it is outward looking. And it is our overarching approach to life, to success. Because when we see success as abundant, then we are less likely to hoard information, talent, etc., in order to keep it just for me. If we're both successful, then obviously that pie gets bigger. And generosity is the candle where I light your light from mine. It's sharing the warnings of impending disaster. It is sharing my past experiences and expertise in order to set us up for success. As a leader of SkyTeam, a consulting firm in the leadership and executive coaching space, I'm often asked, who are my competitors? And I can tell you that that question literally bamboozles me. I can feel the cogs moving in my head. They're getting stuck, they're jarring, because it really does cause me brain freeze, because I do not think about the world of work in that way. In my experience, there is more than enough people, issues and challenges, enough work to go around. Now, right now, I know I'm in competition with Gartner for a piece of work. Well, okay, so Gartner is my competition? Well, yes, but also no. And so here, this is about when it isn't in our wheelhouse, we'll quickly refer to other firms who are better suited to meet our clients' needs. And the key here is often we see that sense of competition inside organizations where you get the politics, silos and turf wars that slow down collaboration, slow down information flow, and ultimately diminish the quality of the questions that we can make. I'll give you an example. Charlene's another member of the 100 Coaches. She called me a couple of weeks ago to talk through how to price a workshop. She is mainly an executive coach, but was running a program for a leadership team, and it was new to her. But when we got talking, we actually moved from the dollars to the plan and the agenda that she had. And as we went through it, we identified ways where she could modify the activities she'd got planned to actually get a greater chance of a positive outcome versus inflaming what was a tense situation. And she emailed me last week, and literally, and I've put this in the book, the email that she sent me, or the text message that she sent me, just made my day. Because here's what she said. Huge thank you. Not only did you help me design the session, but you gave me the gift of confidence. It went amazingly. The leader that hired me gave me a hug at the end, and another leader is bringing me in to do something with their team. And that for me is abundance and generosity in action, a 30-minute call that actually went to 90 minutes, but it was all about helping her to shine. And so abundance and generosity is the foundation. It's grounded in our core values. Do I care about your success as much as my own? And am I clear about what my definition of success is? Because without that, there are no guardrails. Goes back to my opening question. If you've said yes when you should have said no, if you should have made an alternative request or given warnings of impending disaster, it implies those guardrails aren't clearly articulated for you. Because abundance and generosity does not mean that you just become the yes person and the doormat for everybody else. It means that you can give a powerful no or a confident no in order to give a more powerful yes to the things that truly matter, that align to your purpose and to your priorities. Now, once you've got abundance and generosity, I can go back to Gary Ridge. It's all about connection and compassion, because then it's, do I know you as a human being? Patty touched on this when she was saying it's about the depth and the quality of our relationship. And certainly I know early in my banking career, my first 15 years of work, being told it's not personal, it's just business. Well, as HR professionals, we know that all business is personal. If we don't invest in the people bit, creating a sense of belonging and inclusion, if we don't understand what emotions and stresses and anxieties people are feeling, then that sense of isolation and loneliness is only going to fester. And when we have high trust, when we have connection, we are more willing to give assumptions of positive intent, the benefit of the doubt, versus jumping to conclusions and writing the negative stories that we saw earlier on. Remember when I asked, what's your number? It's a subtle but powerful way to build a sense of connection. I have another team that uses ripples and joys or 2-word check-in. Just put it into the chat. What are you thinking and feeling? And in response, now I know that it's been seen and I can follow up afterwards if people are sharing that they're feeling anxious or overwhelmed. But also recognizing by seeing everybody's comments that it's not just me. So I trust you. I may start to even like you at this point in the ally mindset, but this is where I'm starting to think about how do I accelerate our relationship journey by proactively sharing and asking questions that go beyond just the task at hand, the what needs to get done, but also starts to build the how do we relate, how are we going to work and collaborate together? Which brings me to courage and vulnerability. Now, many of you might know someone who ascribes to the fake it till you make it mantra. You know, I've got this. Don't admit weaknesses. Don't ever admit I don't know the answer. And that was me. I mean, I'm British. Stiff upper lip, walk it off. That's our, cultural identity. But what I have learned is that we all need a healthy dose of courage and vulnerability. And for me, courage when it comes to the business, easy peasy lemon squeezy. But vulnerability when it comes to tough feedback, I try the psychic approach, I try the subtle hint approach, I'll try the passive aggressive approach, I'm a pro at that one, but I will do everything to avoid the tough conversation and the risk that comes with it. And I have always, up until now, prided myself on keeping work and home separate. I always wore a professional mask. I believed if I'm going to be an executive coach, if I'm going to be a leadership facilitator, I have to have my stuff together in order to work with you. But the reality is there can be no intimacy in an HR appropriate way. You can't get to true connection and compassion without courage and vulnerability. And opening the cracking the door, admitting when I don't know, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, has helped my team to get closer together. Admitting when I don't know, but let's work it out together when I'm partnering with clients has resulted in both a stronger relationship, but the most amazing creativity and innovation when it comes to the programs that we're able to deliver. So courage and vulnerability is about asking for help when it's needed, being open to feedback and admitting our mistakes, and having the courage to take that feedback or that assistance when it's offered. Vulnerability comes from the heart, and it moves us from beyond just a transactional relationship to something that is sticky and will stand the test of time and weather the storms. So courage and vulnerability also gets us from thinking stuff to actually being able to share stuff, because candor and debate is the conversation I need to have with Fiona, for example. I need to shore up my courage and vulnerability and have the candid conversation around how do I best support her and me going forward. And this is where we talk about our relationship with each other. And if you've ever been in a meeting where, people are going, oh, this is fabulous, but then afterwards they're going, oh God, this sucks, then there is no candor. And it isn't just pull the pin and lob the candor grenade and sit back and watch the crazy ensue. And I've seen mischievous leaders who will do that when they get bored. You have to be willing to be part of the conversation and debate that follows. So candor and debate together makes for the best type of conflict. Because even if you and I go nose to nose and have a knockdown, drag out fight and disagreement, when we leave the Zoom call, the relationship is strengthened. It's an increased understanding of where we're both coming from versus, the wounds that we carry that cause us to hesitate next time. And you mentioned it when I talked about interrupting, how you sit back and stop participating. If you don't have candor and debate in the right way, then you're going to have the yes people. You're going to have disengagement. You're not going to be getting to the real elephants in the room that need to be addressed in order to achieve the business goals. And then that brings us to action and accountability. So action and accountability is the capstone. I've been working with a group of high-performing leaders in a corporation that has switched to remote work like we all have. And they made a decision literally 18 months ago that was going to impact the whole company. 18 months later, they still haven't communicated it. It's a lack of candor and debate outside of the leadership room, but it's also a lack of action and accountability to actually do what we say we're going to do. So action and accountability stops everything that's come before from just being hot air, wishes, ponies, and unicorns. And so whether it's feedback that you need to give, feedback you need to hear, when it comes to creating constructive, strong relationships across the organization, these are the 5 practices that we've heard both through the Ally Mindset profile, through our interviews with leaders, and through the participants in our workshops that truly make a difference. And that's the thing about the Ally Mindset. The choice is now yours to look up and evaluate where are you naturally strong and where could you need to pay more attention? Where do I need to turn the dial down for this particular relationship, or maybe turn the dial up in a different situation, say for Fiona? It's intentionality, it's a choice. But when we have a choice, we have control. And when we have a choice and we have control, then we get to be the most powerful and influential version of us that we can be. So I'm going to pause here and ask, what questions do you have about this whirlwind introduction to the 5 practices of the Ally Mindset? Either put them in the chat or come off mute.
I have a question about this. Is it like 50% and above on each category? Is it 70%? Is there like a generalization that you can give us?
So Lynette, that is a great question. And I have just, because although I am a numbers person from finance, I am not a detailed numbers person. So I have just had a statistician, is that the right word, who's been analysing all of the data. And I do have now those ranges for each of the 5 areas and overall, but not put to memory right now. So I will go and look at that data and send it to you afterwards. But my goal with the Ally Mindset profile is not that it is a pass-fail or a good, better, best. It's you are in your role and successful, whether you're scoring at 50% or 90%. Now, ideally, the higher the number, the greater your ability to flex and meet your needs, because it starts with me, and the needs of your colleague. So yes, we want to increase them where possible. And it's understanding the context in which you're leading. As I said, there are times where I have to be directive, to speak up, to cut people off if they're going in the wrong direction, where interrupting is important. There's a fire in the building, we're not going to sit and discuss and collaborate the best way to escape. I'm just going to say, cut to the chase, people, follow me, here's where we're going. So that's where I might need more courage and vulnerability. It might need more candor, but no debate. But at the other end, so if I score 90, easy. But if I score 90, then knowing when to listen, to enjoy the pause, the awkward silences that allow others to contribute, that's where I might need to deliberately turn the dial down. Does that make more sense? But I'll find those ranges for you. They're sitting on my desk. That's my holiday homework, is to get those fed into the report.
Okay, thank you.
What else? Who else has got a question? Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to put you into smaller groups this time. There are going to be 3 of you in each room. And the reason I'm doing is so that everybody has a chance to speak. And I'm going to send you away for 5 minutes. And I just want you to think about your best colleague ever. What made them special? And which of the 5, or which of the many 5 practices did they role model that made them the best colleague ever? So 5 minutes in your breakout rooms, who comes to mind? In what way did they role model the Ally Mindset practices? And when you come back, I'll ask for a couple of examples and then move to the punchline around closing this out. So see you back in the Grand Hall in 5 minutes. There you go. Time flies when you're having fun.
Indeed. Hey, Morag,
Yeah.
it's Laurel. There's a couple of questions that came up in chat that we were talking about in our group.
Yeah. So
And
what were the questions then, Laurel?
Let's see.
There's some in the chat I'll get to.
Right. Those, Deb had one specific about the ally mindset profile.
Yeah.
We were talking about what if one leader is perceived as arrogant and nobody wants to ally with that person. But we got to talking about a specific person I identified that I had worked with who and let me just be clear, this one has a very clear gender issue. Every woman is his secretary, and that sort of thing seems to spread to other aspects of the job, to which Tina replied, I think I've worked with that person.
Okay.
But that's the sort of thing.
So, two things. You can't change them unless they're willing to change. All we can do, and this is the point of the ally mindset, is change how we show up.
Right.
I remember a certain colleague whose mere presence on this planet would put my hackles up and drive me nuts. I remember getting to the point in a meeting where I was so frustrated by them, I literally slammed the lid shut on my laptop and had to leave the room. And she continued, I believe, oblivious to my reaction. Now, the rest of the board that I was on, probably not. And what I had to do was to change my stories about her. The fact that she, whatever, it doesn't matter. I had to change my stories and value her contribution in a different way so that I was not triggering myself. So when you call a colleague arrogant, I have yet to meet anybody who wakes up in the morning going, I hope Laurel thinks I'm arrogant today. And so how do you change that story? Now, the fact that their behavior is causing that with you and others, that's the 360. It's the coaching and the feedback. And eventually either, depending on where they are in the organization, you choose whether they should be part of the organization. Do they fit or not? Or you choose, do you want to still be part of this organization, or do you go and find a different leader or team to thrive in? But either way, you're then not stuck in the me versus them. So that would be my combined answer to the what if somebody else is arrogant. Buy the book, highlight the chapters and leave it on their desk. That's my passive aggressive subliminal messaging. It's not going to work. You've got to have the candid conversation. You have to step up and go first, candor and debate. And then would your scores change over time, as Deb asked? Well, we're just starting that research now, but my expectation is yes, if we're being deliberate and thoughtful, our scores are going to increase, our consistency is going to increase. And as I was saying to Kathleen, one of our 2023 projects is to create, from the self-assessment you have right now, a stakeholder feedback version that allows us to compare, almost like a 360. Here's what I think I'm doing. What is the experience of the people who are passengers in my car? I think I'm an above average driver. Are they terrified and hanging on, or are they, woohoo, we're on a road trip together? So that will be coming, but the list is ever growing of my to-do list of things to do. But share your results and ask people, does this surprise you or not? When I look at my results, and I was looking at some of the reports that came through, certainly when I looked at mine, it did not surprise me. Abundance and generosity is high. Action and accountability is high. Courage and vulnerability is middling, and candor and debate is middling. And I understand now from my own reflection where it is that I naturally go yes, and where I'm also sometimes holding back when I should step up. So as you reflect on your best colleagues, I'm going to ask you to send a power thank you to them. So as ever, this is all about relationships, and relationships are built one conversation at a time. So I'm going to ask you, whoever you were thinking of as your role model for the ally mindset, send them a message, LinkedIn, email, text, pick up the phone, message to the universe. And don't just say, hey, I was thinking of you today. Say, I was thinking of you as an ally, and here's why. And I guarantee you are making a deposit into that relationship bank account. And in fact, when you get a reply back from them, email me, let me know what they said, because I get goosebumps when I hear about some of the reconnections and connections that are made as a result of that activity. But I'll leave you with a final challenge. How will you be a better friend and ally at work. And it starts with you have to look up. You have to decide, how do you currently feel in your own presence? How do you want others to feel in your presence? And then you need to show up. You need to be intentional, either turning the dial up or turning the dial down as needed, but be intentional about how you show up. And then know, because I've written the book and I teach this for a living, that we're not perfect. So at the end of the day, reflect on, did you do your best? Not wing it. Did you do your best? And if the answer is yes, even if you fluff the landing, there is always tomorrow where you get to start again. So look up, show up, step up. For me, those are the 3 steps to demonstrating and growing your ally mindset. So as we come to the end of our time together, I know 90 minutes, it went like that. There is so much we could have talked about. I appreciate you hanging on there with me and the questions and the conversations in the chat. I encourage you, please connect with me. I am your ally. And I promise if you reach out to me with a question, whether it's related to Cultivate, whether it's related to the new book, whether it's related to leadership and people challenges in general, I will respond because this is what I love to do. And as I said earlier, business is personal, relationships matter. And this is something that we can all invest in, because are you a best friend at work? Thank you.
Wow. Amazing. If I could just ask that you stop the screen share so we can get one final look at everybody's smiling faces, or your name, whichever we happen to have. That was magnificent. Is anybody dying to say something before we close off? I see some comments coming in to chat too. So let me make sure. Oh, I love this one. As an HR manager, I hesitate to get too close to employees as I may be the bearer of bad news the next day.
So contract for it. I mean, call me, but this is it. As your HR partner, there are going to be times where I'm going to have to deliver bad news. How do I need to do that? Now let's go for a pint. But if you make it explicit at the beginning, when you have to do it, it isn't a surprise for anybody. And this is part of it. We assume others understand our intent, but it's all up here. So contract for it and make it explicit. But as HR, don't be on an island. Everything comes through you. You've seen it in the last 2 years. You are critical to every organization. But if you take it on your own, on an island, and keep that wall up, that's when the loneliness, disconnect, anxiety, and stress continues to go up, because you too need the support and the friends at work. Oh,
there was I think it might have been Evil HR Lady, Suzanne Lucas wrote an article a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. It said, sorry, HR, you don't get to have a best friend at work. So I'm glad you wrote that question in there and that we got a little bit of an answer, because how many of us are totally either burnt out or numb over these past 18, 19 months now, because we've been trying to be there for everybody else. And if we don't have someone for ourselves, we're just dying on the vine. And so, and I think that's where a lot of those low scores may be coming from too. I mean, we heard some about being acquired and things like that. Morag just put in a plug for the corporate bartender. That is how I've gotten to know the Sky team. And you show up at 4:00 Mountain Time. You can have whatever. You can have whatever beverage of choice. We have great conversations. Dr. Bob Nelson was on a couple weeks ago, and then yesterday was, remind me of his name. The Cintas guy.
Yeah, that's Eric's guest.
Yes, Eric's guest. It's a fun way to connect with HR folks. And so if you need a best friend, a virtual best friend, there are a lot of allies on that. So anything else? Any other comments? Yes, Patty.
Yeah, I just was going to say the other thing, I agree that HR can be a very lonely world. But it is groups like this and finding connections among people here. So my encouragement too is for all of us to think about who on this call in our small groups or whatever did we click with, that we thought this is somebody that kind of understands my journey and that I could ally with and be that person for them. I mean, I've got a group of multiple HR leaders that are my go-to. And like when I'm having crap happening, like I'm just like, hello, help me. So I would just encourage us all to use each other, because sometimes it's not always internal. Sometimes it's those external allyships that are so, so critical for feeding our spirits and keeping us going.
And that's a great plug for this group and other groups, Patty. Thank you. I had mentioned that this group was started in 2005, or chartered anyway. I think the first meeting might have been in 2006. I think I came aboard in 2007. This is a wonderful group, and there are others like it. So we need connection. And that's what this group is about. It's about networking with other professionals. So Morag, so many thank yous to you. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. And for the rest of you, we look forward to seeing you in January. If you can join us on January 13th, and have a wonderful, refreshing holiday season, and best wishes in the new year for all of you. Thank you so much. Take care now. Bye.